What's going on, peeps? After diving into I Don't Know How's catalog in the previous video, I was encouraged to check out the work of Dallon Weekes before the formation of I Don't Know How But They Found Me. I'm not talking about his time in Panic at the Disco, I'm talking about the Brobecks, best known for their album Violent Things, featuring the underground TikTok hit Better Than Me, their only album on streaming services. They put out 4 albums and several EPs before dissolving in 2013. I was shocked to see that despite having 700,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, a deep catalog, and enough fame to have opened for Fall Out Boy at one point, the band doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. Heck, the information about the Brobecks seems pretty limited at first glance. I saw this as a challenge to bring this band's story to light, to find out what happened to the Brobecks. Now, this story doesn't start with the Brobecks, that's right. Before I Don't Know How, before Panic, before the Brobecks, there was 1000 West. 1000 West was a band started in Clearfield High School in Clearfield, Utah by Scott Jones, Dallon Weekes, Matt Glass, and Corey Rawl in 1996. They performed at school talent shows, assemblies, and later recorded music at Cottage Studios. The lineup changed a few times, with Corey leaving and new members like Elliot Decker, Brian Shemansky, and Chris Lightfoot joining. The band produced 8 CDs and recorded Beatles covers using 4-track and mixed down cassettes. Like most high school bands, this one didn't last. In 1999, the group graduated from high school and disbanded to serve missions for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Oklahoma. Weekes served a full-time 2-year mission before moving back to Clearfield. In 2002, Dallon, aka DJ Mr. Ultra Cool, Scott, and Matt reunited with classmate photographer-producer Michael Gross to form the Brobecks, making 1000 West a sort of a precursor. The band started as like this weekend hobby for Weekes. They had their first show at the Kilby Court, where the audience mainly consisted of family, friends, and co-workers. It was during their 3rd performance at the venue that they noticed strangers attending, which indicated they were gaining recognition locally. After their next show sold out, Weekes realized he wanted to pursue music as a career for the long term. Weekes was attending Weber State University at the time, but after seeing all this happening, he decided to drop out. The band has been long described as adorable, intelligent 19th century indie pop. They were named after a mysterious figure from Dallon's school, someone apparently with the last name Brobeck, who is frequently called to the office over the loudspeakers. Some believe they may not have existed at all. Looking into the definition of Brobeck, it represents an unknown person that no one really knows much about. The idea of being an anonymous figure, present yet unnoticed, resonated with him. He identified himself as feeling like this outsider. He saw Brobeck as a symbol of someone who blends into the crowd but isn't really a part of it. Out of the gate, they had no intentions of fitting in. It isn't a statement. It isn't our clothes. It isn't on MTV. We aren't cool. We aren't dorks. We're just a band who plays music for the sake of playing, and we don't mind having a good time while doing it. The band experimented with recording and played shows before deciding on July 4th, 2003 to create their first full release, the 4th of July. However, after recording, Scott Jones left the band and took his tracks with him, leading to the remaining members to abandon that record in favor of a studio album. After Scott left, Dallon and Mike stepped up as the lead singers, and they welcomed pianist Ryan Shemansky to the band again. However, they still needed another guitarist, so they posted an ad around Weber State University, and Cassie Durans responded. They began performing locally in September 2003, shortly after Casey and Brian joined. The Brobecks started working on their first full-length album, Understanding the Brobecks. They wanted complete control over the recording process, treating it like an experiment as they explored different ideas and methods until they were satisfied. After completing 3 songs, they decided to give fans a preview by selling an EP called Understand the Brobecks Step 1 under Shoshin Productions at their shows. The EP was well received, attracting attention from local magazines and newspapers. Their material contained sharp, witty lyrics, catchy pop melodies, and bold, energetic pop vibes. Matt thought it would be interesting to document their recording journey, so he carried a camera with him for the next 2 months. After 3 months of filming, he created a 30-minute documentary titled Documenting the Brobecks, which followed the band through their recording, promotion, and performances. By mid-November, the Brobecks had finished recording the album, but Shoshin Productions had already scheduled the CD release. They only had a week or 2 to mix the album before it was sent off to them. A week before release, they received copies of the finished CD and were frustrated to find the quality was poor. Just CDRs with stickers, and sloppy artwork. Despite the issues, the first printing of Understanding the Brobecks sold out within a month. It was a success in the Salt Lake City music scene, helping them build a substantial local following for their lively keyboard-driven sound. Brian's keyboard skills really shaped the Brobecks' early sound, and he brought their first album to life. They requested more copies from Shoshin, but their calls went unanswered. Realizing they needed to part ways with their label, the Brobecks continued to sell over 500 CDR copies of their EP, which received great reviews and was voted one of the top 3 albums of 2003 by City Weekly's Slammy Awards. The album features a mix of straightforward rock songs like Good Girls, Didn't Mean To, and Downtown, alongside slower layered tracks like I'd Be a Punk, Cowboy Song, and Why I Don't Smile. It also includes the quirky side of the band like Sloppy Seconds, Monday Morning, and Creep You Out. On May 14, 2004, the Brobecks officially started recording their second album in Weekes' garage and produced by Matt Glass. It was quite chaotic based on the progress page they made that detailed the entire experience. Guitarist Casey Durham's left the band on June 8th. The reason is personal to the group. Although Casey contributed during the first month, he left before it was completed, and none of his work made it onto the album. They initially wanted to call the album The Happiest Nuclear Winter, but the shorter title was decided just before completion. This did not stop their momentum. The Brobecks were recognized as one of the top 10 alternative bands on the Unsigned Music Network. On August 13th, the Brobecks announced that every copy of their debut sold after that date would contain the new versions of Good Girls and Hey You, which had been remixed, remastered, and had new vocals. By December 5th, their second album was finished, and the next step was to print the CDs. It was described by Weekes as pretty ambitious for kids who still didn't know what they were doing. It would finally arrive on January 22nd, 2005, under Never Break Records. There was Come On Vietnam, written from the viewpoint of a young Vietnamese boy living through the fear and violence of the Vietnam War. Heck, most of the album has various themes of nuclear war in general, as the album title indicates, using it to describe a toxic relationship on Everyone's a Jerk But Me, accompanied by an impactful piano solo. There's also in Shoot the Sun, where the heartbroken singer wishes to shoot the sun to block out the pain of a breakup. Next, Matt narrates a comedic spoken word track 1 Minute of Fun, satirically promoting a nuclear sunshine research family as a pleasant but slightly radioactive place to be. Glass continues to lose his mind on You Stole My Head and gets berated over not being into guy stuff like sports, beer, and sex on the electronic pop Ali. File code 1459 is a bit more bizarre. The bitter, toxic lyrics have nothing to do with the title, but it was apparently taken from a piece of paper Gross found. One of the songs that didn't age well in a good way was Die Alone, written while Dallon was convinced he'd be single for life. A year later, he would be married to his wife Breezy. Don't give up, y'all. You'll find someone too. Concluding with the description of a sick, emotionless lover on She's a Lover, seeing it as an emergency broadcast that needs to be confronted. The lineup of the Brobecks underwent many changes over time, especially when Matt Glass and Brian Szymanski left the band on June 28, 2005. They were replaced by Nate Leslie and Dave Shezem on July 6. It led to a fairly messy period for the band, but these were also the days where they were at their peak. Despite label interest and success for an indie band like them, they stayed independent. The Brobecks self-released their third album, Goodnight and Have a Pleasant Tomorrow, through CD Baby on April 22, 2006. Weekes himself isn't a big fan of it, even warning the listeners that he didn't put his heart into it. It was seen as more of a vibey, laid-back record, but still contains the punchy, theatrical hooks they were known for, tackling the overwhelming emotions of a breakup on West of California, being unable to move on from someone who has already moved on, just like on Jackie, pretending to be fine about it on I'll Be Fine Really, losing sleep on sleeping pills, and getting haunted by various pieces of a past relationship on You Are a Ghost. One question I have about this record is March 1st. Where's March 2? Some tracks are more freeing, trying hard not to fall in love on I'll Break Your Arm, toasting to a good future on Heartbreak or Death, and wanting to have your lover by your side always on City Lights. 3 of the songs were re-recorded for Violent Things. The Brobecks opened for bands like Phantom Planet, Ben Queller, The Bravery, and Fall Out Boy. It was February 10, 2007. The band performed as an opening act for Fall Out Boy at a Fueled by Ramen event. Unfortunately, the crowd wasn't wasn't really impressed, and Dallon's performance reportedly suffered due to him having a cold. This led to a less than stellar showing at the Roxy. It was the reason Dallon wrote Nobody Likes the Opening Band. On the flip side, labels were still knocking on their door following their performance. They were offered a contract from a branch of Drive-Thru Records. However, the biggest story was that Sony BMG and Interscope Records introduced contracts too, but these contracts weren't for the band themselves. They were offered to Dallon. Weekes would be offered a solo contract if he just dropped his bandmates, left them all behind, but he refused. He could have agreed and became incredibly successful, but it was clear that he wanted to stay independent and take his friends with him to the top. But ironically, that same year, the remaining members of the Brobecks split from Dallon, leaving him as the sole member of the band. There has been bad blood between his former bandmates since, possibly stemming from getting their ego hurt over these bands wanting Weekes over the rest of the band. Another rumor was that during the Roxy, their keyboardist was hitting on the label manager's wife, which obviously disrupted the contract process. Weekes continued the band anyway in California. He brought in new members, including Josh Rowe, Drew Davidson, Connor Doyle, and Ryan Seaman. In 2008, Dallon recorded music with the producer from The Deer Hunter, Casey Crescenzo. As a result, the single Second Boys Will Be First Choice was included in the daily rotation of Salt Lake City radio station X96, the first time an unsigned act had received airplay in the station's 20-year history. After some challenges during recording, Dallon released the final Brobecks album, Violent Things, on May 18th, 2009, through his independent label, None You Jerk Records, being completely written by him. Weekes recorded 15 songs for the album in a week and a half with the producer Casey at his basement studio in Boston, Massachusetts. Due to budget limitations, the album was released without mixing or mastering, which later led to disappointment with the final project expressed by the man himself. Despite all this, it has since become a cult classic. So let's break this record down more than I did the others, as it is truly special. It includes some unhinged song topics out the gate, like a wealthy, crazy girlfriend threatening her boyfriend after he wronged her on the chaotic Goodnight Socialite, probably for trying to end the relationship. If I can't have you, nobody can. Visitation of the Ghost draws inspiration from the klezmer tradition and tells a dark story about a poisoned spouse killed for inheritance money. He loves performing this one live as it allows him to improvise with his bandmate Ryan and create audience participation, especially during the vocalization on the bridge, making them feel like a part of the performance. It honestly might be my favorite track here. Everything from the pounding percussion to the slick bass line to the low notes from the brass just gives off this moody, uneasy sound. But the most popular cut is the self-deprecating Better Than Me, based on one's own insecurities. Quite the loose track with multiple solos and catchy melodies. Another popular one is the dark cabaret ambiance of small cuts, discussing the desperate, unhealthy ways people garner attention. Contains an explosive hook that takes your breath away. It gets pretty unfortunate, like on the addiction describing electropop rock flavors of All the Drugs, where a girl promises to get off drugs before breaking that sobriety, before hearing about love at first sight, the first night Dallon met his wife, a precious acoustic guitar-led folk pop piece. Another snapshot of hope occurs on Second Boys Will Be First Choice, filled with wonky synths where Dallon encourages guys who get turned down for another man to be hopeful that you will find someone even better than her. Maybe all the lovers you've had before don't matter at all once you've found your match, like on If You Like It or Not with driving guitars and synth leads. Other cuts are more silly, like Les Velos pour Deux, a true story of vampires in the early 1900s France falling in love and riding bicycles. Likely another wholesome track about his wife. Bike Ride is also pretty silly, seeing him describe simple human errors that have him holding his hands high and being like, "Welp, guess I'm going to hell," leading to I Will Tonight, that in comparison to the rest of the record has a strange mix that almost seems like the volume was turned down by accident. At least on Spotify. This track is where a boy is left alone after a nuclear disaster wipes out humanity, seeing how witnessing such a tragedy affects a person, as the boy goes through the 5 stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance, when he decides to take that little pill. Another case of developments comes on The Nerve, where this man finally dumps his toxic girlfriend after dealing with too much. The 6-minute closer is boring. I'm not describing this song, by the way, it's awesome, but that's just the title. It follows a sentiment that life can be pretty boring sometimes when every day feels the same. It really gives us a time to reflect on the experience within the last 2 minutes of the clashing instrumentation. That's just, wow, it's a lot. While Sicker Things didn't do well when it was first released, it gained popularity in the early 2020s during the TikTok boom. This song, Better Than Me, stood out for its self-deprecating lyrics and received a lot of attention. The messier release led to the project slowly dying out with all the other members departing that year. It got so bad to the point where Dallon was thinking about quitting music for good. But then, he got a call. Dallon Weekes began recording with Panic at the Disco as their touring and later studio bassist during their joint summer reunion tour with Blink-182 and Fall Out Boy in the final half of 2009. While he was with Panic, he managed to release some Brobecks material. On September 9th, 2012, Dallon released the entire Brobecks catalog to Bandcamp. Later that year, Weekes released the Quiet Title EP, along with physical copies of the Violent Things reissue CD. The Quiet Title EP includes 2 songs, Anyone I Know and Cluster Hug, with Ian Crawford on guitar and Matt Glass helping with the recording and editing. In an interview with Salt Lake City's X96 radio station, Weekes said that these songs were written during the process of creating Panic's 4th album, but just didn't fit their vision for it. What was left of the Brobecks performed sporadically until 2013, and they just eventually became inactive. According to Weekes, the band was never successful enough to pay the bills, so leaving it behind was an easy decision to make. In 2017, Dallon left Panic to focus full-time on his project with Ryan Seaman called I Don't Know How, But They Found Me, which they had secretly started in 2016. See my previous video for more. The Brobecks music still lives on through I Don't Know How, as they often perform some of their older songs, including Visitation of the Ghost, Boring, and Cluster Hug, the last of which appeared on their debut album Razzmatazz in 2020. Former Brobecks frontman Mike Gross's project Whisper Hawk occasionally plays songs from their past. As the I Don't Know How fandom continues to grow, so does the Brobecks fandom. It's a beautiful thing, huh? If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, please like and subscribe for more bass content. I'll see y'all in the next one. Make sure to love all, and peace.